So today we're talking about how to prepare our raised beds for the planting season, and we're about to get started in these raised beds, some with the seedlings that we have growing in our indoor grow area and some directly into the soil. So today we're going to talk about what we need to do to prepare this soil for our seeds and just kind of getting this box ready for the season. Now this box here was, we put this one together last year, and it mainly is comprised with dirt on the very base layer from our field with a bit of just branches and leaves and organic material in the bottom of it. And then on top here is just a standard organic mix 707, Root Organics 707 formula. And what we're going to do this morning is basically we're going to inoculate and add some feed to this prior to adding our worms here in the next few days. And then that will get this garden box ready for the planting season for our seedlings, at least for the first 30 days of our vegetables that we plan on planting in this box here. So the first thing that we're going to do is that you see that we have this kind of grassy mulch layer on the top here. Any grass that was growing, which there's a lot of grass growing around the box, and some of it actually came up through the box. So what we ended up doing was breaking down to the roots of the grass and pulling it away and chopping them up. And basically that organic material is going to break down inside of the soil, but you need something to break it down. So we do have some worms in here. We're going to add some more, but we're going to inoculate this system so that it's basically alive by the time the seeds or seedlings go into it. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this organic material away, just exposing the soil here. Then we're going to add our 3 amendments to it. Now I'm pulling away the center section here, but once I get this center section done, I'll pull each corner so that the entire box is fully inoculated with what we're trying to use. So the first ingredient that we're going to use is the Kashi Blend. So the Kashi Blend is basically our inoculum. It also has some amendments to it to feed the plants as well, but basically the Kashi Blend is really what's going to start up the microbial action in the soil from the start. This is a product that we purchased from buildasoil.com. We've been really pleased with buildasoil.com and all of the products that they have listed. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take this, which that Kashi Blend also has some biochar and other things in here that are basically just going to give the microbes a place to live. It also is a little bit of the food for the microbes as well, but we're just going to inoculate this system in this top here. We're going to add our 2 other ingredients also from Build a Soil. So let's go ahead and get this Kashi Blend in first. Now when you put this down into your garden beds, sometimes you'll notice as once we cover it with the mulch layer, if you see parts of it underneath the mulch layer, it actually looks like mold growing. It gets white, it gets fuzzy. That is just your mycelium growing, which is a good sign. You want that beneficial fungi to be growing with your plants, especially the ones that are basically feeding your roots. Those ones will attach themselves to the root system and essentially be the helpers that will pull nutrients to your plants, again giving them that kind of vigorous life to them. The second product we have here is the Craft Blend. Now the Craft Blend is basically just a fertilizer feed that's fully organic from buildasoil.com, and this product is great because it's kind of just a all-around 100% good feed and fertilizer for pretty much all of your annual plants. It's something that we use when we're growing all the medicinal plants we do. So definitely something that I feel is going to be really beneficial to all of our vegetables growing in these garden beds. So we're going to do the same thing and just adding a layer of that feed on top. Mainly just a dusting, enough that you can see where it's at. And the final product that's going in here is the top dress, which is this dark, thick material. This is going to give that additional amendment on top. Worm castings are extremely good for plants. They're one of the best, if not the best, fertilizer that you can use worms breaking down all the material. You want your microbes, you want all those small arthropods, microarthropods, the beneficial fungi. You want all these little microbes breaking down all your nutrients into plant available forms. When they're working cohesively with your root system, you see a much bigger difference in your plant growth, and you end up with a much healthier plant because you basically, instead of feeding the roots directly, you're feeding the soil. The soil is alive with all of these different microbiology, and that microbiology is what's feeding your plants. So feed the soil, soil feeds the plants, and that's how the relationship is in organics. Now our final product that we are going to add is this 1 gallon mixture that we made just a second ago. And the first thing that I start with on this 1 gallon container, basically room temperature water. When your temperatures get too low, microbes actually go dormant. When you get to a temperature too hot, you have to actually kill off some of your good microbes. So what I like to do is just kind of keep my water a mixture between hot and cold, and just kind of room temperature, slightly lukewarm. But I try to make it so that the microbes are happy in here. The first thing that we start with in here is our Thermax, which we're only using about 2.5 milliliters of Thermax in here, which is basically our surfactant, which is going to make this solution very soapy and wet. What that's going to do is it's going to get a better even saturation of this liquid all over our bed. The second ingredient we're adding in here is the microbes, which we're adding maybe a teaspoon of microbes in here because it's a very small amount. That is the Rootwise BioComplete that we're adding on here, and those are our inoculum. And then the last thing that we're adding is the enzymes from Rootwise, and that's basically just going to charge these microbes up and get them ready for the bed that's in here. Just get them alive, get them recharged, get them ready to go. So as you shake it up, you can see that there's a lot of bubbles in here. That's their surfactant working for you. And what it really does is just makes water more wet. If you look at a bead of water in your hand versus a bead of water with soap in your hand, it spreads out more, and that's really what you're wanting to do. You don't want your solution to just be dry in pockets. You want it to be wet everywhere. So that's pretty much why a surfactant is pretty crucial and important. We'll go back through here and we'll actually just water the whole bed with just some plain water and really get this whole bed just alive and ready for the season for planting. And the reason why this is important is mainly because when your seeds are, little seedlings, or they're new, or you're just planting seeds directly into your box, you really want your seeds to have more or less partners. When you throw seeds in just soil and there's not a whole lot of microbial action, there's not a whole lot of helpers that are going into your soil to help them germinate and help them really root in fast, because you don't want to have transplant shock. That can happen when your parameters are a little off, and it also is more susceptible, especially if you don't have those microbes that are essentially sitting in the soil just ready to help out the plant life that they're biologically engineered to help with. And then this section is complete. So what I'll do after this is do the same procedure on these corners. So I'll take my rake and I'm going to cover up this half. Kind of move this section over here. You can see some of the browns and the greens that are in there. Those will decompose over time. I'm not going to plant my plants directly into this mixture, and the reason why is because there will be some breakdown. I want to avoid any heat with seedlings, so I'll probably wait a week or so. I might even take some soil temps in this box just to make sure that nothing is basically getting too hot for seedlings. That's one thing that will be generated, is that microbes breaking down your greens and your browns, your carbon and your nitrogens will generate heat. That's basically what happens in compost piles. And I definitely want to make sure that I'm not planting seedlings or seeds into hot soil because it'll just burn them up. And the biggest thing to preparing these boxes, as I said before, is avoiding situations where your plants just don't grow. They may be alive, but they just don't grow. And we like to avoid that situation because we want every day, every week to be progress. And that's not to say that we don't have some plants that just don't respond exactly the way that we're hoping to, because some plants won't. Sometimes they just will have a little bit of issues, but for the most part, we're just trying to get everything ready so that, as a general rule, everything is set up for the plants as best as possible, the highest percentage of success as possible. That way, everything that we put in here, even if we have a loss of 1% or 10% even, that the majority, still 90%, is going to thrive based on how we set this box up. Get our worm castings on here. And that's the best thing about good plant health, is just having lots of diversity. The more diversity you can have for a plant, just the more gaps that you'll fill in their overall health. Some plants will have issues with not just their macronutrients, but their micronutrients, which are macros. You'll see a healthy plant through macros, good, strong, vigorous growth. But the micronutrients is really what fills in the gaps. Your micronutrients are the things that you don't normally see, like things that are built within the cell walls of plants. When it comes to like a calcium deficiencies, plants are more susceptible to mold and fungal issues, pathogens. So when you try to fill in as much of the gaps as possible, not just your macronutrients, but also your micronutrients, then you're basically building cell walls. You're making your plant less susceptible to not only pathogens and fungus, bad kinds of fungus or mold, but also pests, things like that. Their pheromones that the plants put out, the thickness of the cell walls that they're actually producing, that makes it harder for a bug to actually get in there and really chew it up. It's just a little bit more defensive in that nature. Now, if you're just using regular bag soil, you're buying things like Miracle-Gro or just from your average big box store, you're not going to get all the different things in your amendments and these organics that are going to complete the nutritional value for your plants. So, Build a Soil is artesian soil making company. They're also sourcing different amendments that they don't particularly make themselves or haven't been tested. So you're just looking at the difference between somebody that's really taken the time to make sure that what they're putting in their soil or amendments that they're selling for the soil are proven. It's really not about mass distribution like it would be for some of your big names like Miracle-Gro. Not to say that you can't grow them in there, but everything sourced through Build a Soil is basically non-GMO. Nothing's been adulterated in any way, and they try to make sure that just everything that they're selling and producing is of the utmost quality. And then once we're done with this, we just cover the mulch layer back over the top. And again, we're going to water this in a little bit more with just some clean water, allowing this system to basically go alive before our seedlings and seeds go in. All right, now that we have the system all nice and soaking, we'll go ahead and spread our mulch layer back out. The mulch layer also really helps with retaining not only moisture, but heat to help regulate your soil temperatures. One thing that we have here in Colorado, which we are in 6A, is we have a lot of fluctuating temperatures. Sometimes in the summer, it'll fluctuate 50, sometimes 60 degrees between the day, the highs and the lows. And so having the mulch layer here, especially for us, which we're using more of an annual mulch, which is this grassy layer, which you could also use the barley straw for that we have here. Again, it helps regulate temperature, especially for our area, and you want to protect the root zone. When we're talking about plant health, we're talking about the root zone, not necessarily everything that's above ground, but the rhizosphere. Everything in the rhizosphere was what's super important. So we're trying to protect our microbes, we're trying to protect our roots, and just make sure that they're extremely comfortable by having this insulated layer over the top of them, having the microbes working for them, breaking down nutrients down below. And that's what really helps us here in our region. All right, now this garden box is done. I have one more to do, but what we're gonna do finally is we're just gonna water this whole top in really well, which is going to leave that moisture barrier for the microbes and everything that's basically turning on at this point, so that by the time that we're ready to put our seeds in here in the next week or two, then, or at least by the beginning of May, that this box is ready to go. I did almost forget to mention is that this mulch layer will do one other thing for us, is that here in 6A, we're in mountain desert climate, which it gets pretty dry out here. The natural humidity is usually between 15 to 20%. So this mulch layer actually helps us retain more moisture in the soil so that we don't have so much evaporation, which helps us conserve water as well. So that's the other big thing, is if you have a really well-built system with all the different layers, then you won't have to water as often because you don't have all that evaporation if you have that mulch layer to the top. All right, and that's it. Now that our system is watered, again, the heat from the sun will dry off a top layer of this, but it'll also kind of heat up the water in essence with that layer that we just put underneath all of this. Activating this box, getting it ready, getting some composition and decomposition broken down into it so that once we're ready to start planting in here, this box is gonna be good to go. So thanks guys for joining us. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our new videos. Like this video if it brought you some value, and we'll see you in the next one.